In the GTA franchise, as always, games are in most cases awesome, leaving the story after completing the game usually only unsatisfied, and the desire to receive an addition to the part that we just went through. Sometimes it is better.
I need Mary, yeah, oh, Mary, quite contrary.
Sometimes it is worse. Sometimes we even get a new part of GTA after a year from the previous release, as was the case with Vice City in relation to GTA 3, and sometimes you have to wait. How much? Well, usually it is not known. Well, it's not important because we don't want to pour out a river of lamentations about how, in our opinion, Rockstar Games, or rather Take-Two Interactive, fell in love with GTA Online, and even to the extent that they probably forgot that, once in a while, it would be appropriate to let Rockstar North release some new installment. Anyway, what also quite often remains after passing a given part of GTA are question marks, which of course most often concern the plot of the game itself. Therefore, today, we will try to get your attention to the most interesting threads, describe them and explain at least what is wrong in them and why people can be divided when it comes to talking about it. The first event that may remain a mystery to many of us today is the failed drug deal in Viceport. We know already that Mr. Black was responsible for hiring the 3 hitmen who stopped the exchange. We do not know, however, who was Mr. Black's client, but what is certain is that there are many candidates for this role. One person that immediately comes to mind is the drug lord Ricardo Diaz. The man allegedly found out about the transaction through Gonzalez. Knowing there were 2 organizations coming to Vice City to thrive in the drug market, Diaz had his reasons to get them out of town for sure. What were the reasons? Well, his gang was one of the most influential criminal organizations, and therefore Diaz was not comfortable sharing Vice City with others, which is perfectly logical after all. Nevertheless, in the game's plot itself, we cannot find any reliable evidence that he was the client. The game itself quite often gives us players this person right in the face, mainly through Vance. But, more importantly, we do not receive any specific names or contacts that could vouch for Vance's words, so the whole thing seems questionable, at least for us.
Hey, I've been asking around. It's obvious that Diaz jumped the deal and iced my brother.
And he'll kill you too!
I can take Diaz!
No, listen to me! I'll handle Diaz. He's beginning to trust me.
Another person who could be that client has only recently been taken into consideration. Thanks to a really groundbreaking detail, we can assume that Sonny Forelli could have been this client. To visualize everything better, we will show you what detail we are talking about. During Sonny's conversation with the Mafia capos in the mission In the Beginning, there are several files with cash on the table, which is nothing unusual. The situation changes drastically during the cutscene of An Old Friend mission. When we turn our attention back to the table at Marco's Bistro, we can see that there is a suitcase with drugs on the table and some packages separately. This nuance makes the suspicions about Sonny Forelli fully justified. It is also worth mentioning that the transaction takes place between afternoon and evening. In turn, Tommy Vercetti himself appeared on the first island in the alley at 21:15. Considering the time, Mr. Black's people could make it to the Escobar International Airport with ease to hand over drugs to Sonny, especially because the docks are pretty near. Most importantly, there's a really small chance that the drugs on the table were not from this deal, due to the fact that the Forellis were just entering the drug market. Considering that they were the strongest crime family in Liberty City back then, there was no point to doing drug deals in the city and encouraging weaker organizations to get drugs for themselves as well. Of course, Forellis could use their drugs to sell them to individual customers. Assuming yet another possibility, it could be a person whose identity we do not know, although this perspective seems to be the least likely. The reliability of Colonel Cortez's words also leaves us much to be desired. The most important question here is whether we can definitely call Cortez our friend. The answers can be very different here. The man was supposed to organize the transaction, but it turned out quite incompetently. Cortez tried to help us find the perpetrators through several missions, ensuring that he would find them. In the end, he gave us nothing but suggesting Diaz and then justifying it by thinking out loud.
Although I'm starting to think that Diaz was responsible for our unfortunate loss.
What makes you say that?
One does not wave accusations at a man like Diaz. I'm merely thinking out loud, no matter.
Mainly, Cortez wanted to use us to obtain military equipment and government chips that he could use for his private purposes. Moving on, the next topic that is not clear is the content of the mystery powders that we are to collect for Anti-Poulet in the mission called Juju Scramble. The situation in this case is very similar to the mysterious Donald Loves packages in GTA 3. We know from the mission itself that the powders had to contain something really important since the VCPD were interested in them. What could they contain? Well, considering that Anti-Poulet is kind of a shaman, could be various spices she used to make hypnotic decoctions. On the other hand, there may have simply been drugs in the package since, during the cutscene of the mission called Bombs Away, Tommy brings drug packages, despite that Anti-Poulet vehemently denies them being drugs. Another thing that players may wonder about is the order in which Tommy has been working for the Cuban and Haitian gangs. Although the plot of these two threads happened almost at the same time, there are many indications that Forelli initially worked for the Cubans, then the Haitians, and finally returned to the Cubans. Why was the order of the story like this? We'll explain right away. As you know, the first assignment for the Cubans was to be proof of Tommy's masculinity for Umberto Robina. We believe that if a gangster like Forelli had the first task of crossing Vice City's waters just to prove he had cojones, he might think that the organization he wants to earn some extra money is a bit ridiculous. For this reason, the man could decide to start working for the Haitians after receiving a phone call from Anti-Poulet and completing the Stunt Boat Challenge mission, just to see if they would be the ones who are more valuable to help them. Unfortunately, Tommy was used by them many times, which could anger him, and eventually Tommy stayed with the Cubans. What speaks in favor of Tommy's plan to return to the Cuban people is that, in the Bombs Away and Dirty Lickin', the man carried out tasks in secret so that he would still be able to work with the Cubans. He did so knowingly despite being hypnotized by Anti-Poulet. Another ambiguous point in the storyline is the fact that after completing missions for the Haitians, Anti-Poulet decides to free Tommy from the curse.
Tommy, why you coming back here, fee? Me tell you we don't want to see you around here no more.
The matter is so incomprehensible that it is hard to understand why the woman decided to do it. She had a person under her control who could, without hesitation, kill an entire army of people, especially Cubans. Nevertheless, she decides to let him go. This could be due to several factors. Auntie just might have been concerned that the curse would stop working, or that the Vice City Police Department would soon start persecuting the Haitians because of the chaos Tommy had caused by helping her. Another reason could be Aunt's illusory impression that, after a small battle with the Cubans, the conflict had already been resolved, which, however, would be a bit naive. Other unexplained case is the psychopath who bothered Love Fist Rock Band. The case is very complicated because in the mission called Psycho Killer, we have to kill him. Suddenly, out of nowhere, in the last mission for this band called Publicity Tour, you may hear a recording of the same psychopath who allegedly should be dead.
Hey, Tommy! Take the step on!
Love Fist, your time polluting the airwaves is over. I gave you the chance to be friends. Well, now I'm giving you the chance to die. You try and slow down, your limousine will explode along with your big airy asses.
There are many ways of interpreting it. Some people believe that the psychopath really died and the recording we hear was recorded before his death. It would be logical if the psychopath did not act alone and had an accomplice to take care of everything after his death. Others, on the other hand, believe that the psychopath might have miraculously tricked Destiny, like in the Final Destination series. Let us know what you think about this situation. The next gap in the game's plot is an explanation of how Mitch Baker found out that Tommy Vercetti had been behind bars for 15 years and the Forellis did nothing to get him out. One source may have been a local informant, such as Kent Paul. We know that Paul has previously appeared at the Bikers Club, so it is possible that he was the one who told Baker about it. Another possibility might have been an acquaintance from prison who was friends with Baker. Apart from the fact that the biker gang are war veterans, many of them are social outcasts, and most of them ended up in prison. The last two issues that we will discuss in today's episode are those related to the well-known Lance Vance dance. The first one deals with the details of Lance Vance's collaboration with Sonny Forelli. Until now, it was believed that their cooperation began shortly after the death of Ricardo Diaz. Specifically, when Lance began to complain about Tommy's undercompensation and making a laughingstock of Lance to less important gang members for his insubordination and irresponsibility. However, due to the circumstance that enriched the plot of the Viceport transaction, it turns out that this cooperation may have occurred much earlier. When we look at the variant where Sonny was a client of Mr. Black, he could very easily manipulate Lance, for Lance did not know who the customer was. Sonny Forelli could therefore impose on Lance the idea that it might be Ricardo Diaz. Probably, Sonny could also promise Lance a lot of influence in Vice City for getting rid of Diaz, which of course was only to encourage him. Worst of all, Lance wouldn't know he was going to be working with the person responsible for his brother's death. It is worth emphasizing that Lance could have been a great informant for Sonny, thanks to which he could sit quietly at Marco's Bistro and wait for further news. After taking over Vercetti's mansion with Sonny, he would be a subordinate associate of the Forelli Mafia to keep an eye on him and not allow him to make any leaps. After some time, he would be killed, and the Forellis could even be permanently in Vice City, where money simply appears on every corner, as long as there is no lack of courage to enter a world from which there is often no turning back. The final storyline gap that may confuse quite a bit is the discussion of whether Lance Vance was telling the truth about Ricardo Diaz being guilty. Although he assures us several times, saying that he asked people, he doesn't really indicate anyone in particular. It is then difficult to believe his words so confidently, especially since he does not reveal his informants. Of course, we don't say it's completely a bad thing, because it's really common to not reveal informants, as they are trustworthy sources of information and are risking their lives. So it can be understandable for some reason, but definitely not in terms of trying to say bad things about someone without specifics and details. These pressures on Diaz may have been due to a lust for power and manipulation by third parties like Sonny. It could also be a poor salary, because Lance worked for Diaz too. If, however, we assume that Diaz was really guilty, why did Lance decide to try to kill him on his own? If he could kill him, would he want Tommy as an accomplice? We dare to doubt it because, as Lance said shortly before his death, this is Vice City. This is business.
Sorry, Tommy, this is Vice City. This is business.
And that's all we have prepared for you today. Surely these plot holes will be in the center of attention for many more years, but perhaps some will be solved in the near future. What do you think about these cases? Let us know in the comments section. Don't forget to drop us a like, because that motivates us to make more and more videos. Take care!